He was at the height of his career, a baseball prodigy with talent, fame, and a multi-million-dollar contract. Fans worshipped him, brands lined up to sponsor him, and his name was etched into the history of the sport. Off the field, he had it all, a beautiful partner, a young son, and a life most could only dream of. To the world, he was unstoppable. But behind closed doors, something far more sinister was brewing. She was his heart, his soulmate, the mother of his child. They had built a life together, shared a love story that captivated social media. Smiling photos, lavish vacations, courtside seats at his games, an image of perfection. But pictures can lie. And on one fateful night, in the home they once shared, everything came crashing down in a storm of gunfire. 11 bullets. A desperate 911 call. And a chilling claim, "I thought she was an intruder." But was it really a mistake? Or was there something far darker lurking beneath the surface? Tonight, we unravel the shocking case that left a young woman dead, a superstar in handcuffs, and the nation questioning everything they thought they knew. What drove him to pull the trigger? And was this a crime of passion, or premeditated murder? Before we dive into this twisted and tragic story, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more cases that expose the darkest corners of love, power, and obsession. Now, let's begin. From the outside, Malachi M.J. Dupree had it all. At just 27, he was already a legend, one of the highest-paid players in Major League Baseball, with a $150 million contract and a career that seemed unstoppable. His face was everywhere: billboards, magazine covers, sports drinks, designer campaigns. To the world, he was the golden boy of baseball, a role model for young athletes, the kind of man parents wanted their sons to look up to. But behind the carefully curated image, there was another Malachi, one the cameras never saw. A man plagued by demons, his life fueled by drugs, steroids, and an insatiable need for control. And at the center of it all was Zyariah Cole. She had been with Malachi since they were just 18, long before the fame, before the fortune. She knew him better than anyone, his strengths, his weaknesses, the way his mood could shift like a storm rolling in. Zyariah was stunning, effortlessly elegant, and ambitious in her own right. As a socialite and influencer, she had built a name for herself, but no matter how far she tried to step into her own spotlight, she was always in Malachi's shadow. To the public, she was the devoted partner, the mother of his child, the woman who had stood by him as he climbed to greatness. But behind the Instagram filters and designer outfits was a woman trapped in a relationship she couldn't escape. They had a son together, Malachi Jr., a bright, beautiful little boy who had become Zyariah's anchor, her reason for staying, even when every instinct told her to run. Their relationship had been toxic for years, filled with explosive arguments, broken promises, and the suffocating weight of Malachi's control. He dictated everything: her money, her lifestyle, her freedom. Zyariah had tried to leave more than once, but Malachi knew exactly how to reel her back in. He convinced her that their son needed them both, that she couldn't raise him without his financial support. He made sure she had nowhere else to go, no way to truly break free. And when that wasn't enough, he reminded her who he was. The Malachi Dupree. The man who could make or break lives with a single phone call. He insisted she stay at his Houston mansion, claiming it was best for their son. But Zyariah knew the truth. This wasn't about family. This wasn't about love. Malachi didn't want her with anyone else. To the world, they were the perfect couple, a modern fairy tale. They traveled in private jets, vacationed on yachts, attended the most exclusive events. Social media was flooded with pictures of them smiling, laughing, draped in luxury. But those closest to Zyariah knew better. They saw the exhaustion behind her eyes, the way she flinched at certain questions, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes anymore. She was desperate to break free. But she also knew what Malachi was capable of. And on one fateful night, that fear became reality. Malachi Dupree was unraveling. The world still saw the same confident, charismatic athlete, the man who could step onto a baseball field and command an entire stadium with nothing more than his presence. But behind closed doors, Malachi was a prisoner of his own mind. He had survived 2 attempted robberies in the past, and instead of moving on, the fear consumed him. He became convinced that people were out to get him, jealous rivals, obsessed fans, enemies he couldn't even name. He armed himself to the teeth. Guns in every room. A Glock tucked in the couch cushions. A shotgun leaning against the bedroom wall. A pistol under his pillow every night. The mansion was supposed to be his sanctuary, but it felt more like a war zone, and Malachi was always on high alert. He barely slept, always jolting awake at the smallest sound, gripping his gun with sweaty hands, convinced someone was in the house. His mind, poisoned by years of steroid abuse and drugs, blurred the lines between reality and paranoia. He would pace the halls in the dead of night, eyes darting to the shadows, whispering under his breath. Zyariah saw the changes. She had seen them for years. The mood swings. The violent outbursts. The way his once playful teasing had turned into full-blown rage, breaking things, breaking her. She had learned how to handle him, how to keep herself safe, how to say just enough to calm him but never too much to set him off. But lately, it wasn't working. Malachi was slipping into something darker, something uncontrollable. She knew she had to leave. She had tried before, so many times. But Malachi had made sure she could never really escape. He controlled her finances, made sure she had no money of her own, no way to truly be independent. Every time she threatened to walk away, he would remind her what she would be giving up, the luxury, the stability, their son's future. And when that wasn't enough, he would remind her who he was. Who she was without him. But this time was different. Zyariah had started meeting with lawyers in secret, trying to figure out how to get custody of Malachi Jr. She was careful, never making calls from her own phone, never leaving behind paperwork that he could find. She had whispered her fears to close friends, her voice shaking. Just days before the tragedy, she had been spotted at a small cafe, sitting across from a friend, her usually flawless makeup streaked with tears. Her hands trembled as she wrapped them around her coffee cup, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to get out before it's too late." But deep down, she knew, leaving Malachi Dupree wouldn't be that easy. And soon, it would be too late. December 12th. A night that should have been ordinary. A night that should have ended with Zyariah Cole slipping into bed beside her son, maybe scrolling through her phone, maybe sighing at the weight of the life she was still trying to escape. Instead, it ended in blood. She had spent the evening at dinner with friends, laughing over drinks, trying, just for a few hours, to forget the nightmare waiting for her at home. She had texted Malachi before heading back, a simple message letting him know she was on her way. She didn't want to start a fight. She knew how easily his mind twisted things. How easily he turned her absence into a betrayal. But he hadn't responded. What she didn't know was that Malachi was already unraveling. He had been up for hours, high, wired, his body thrumming with paranoia. The house felt off to him, like something was lurking in the shadows. Every creak of the walls, every rustle of the wind sent him reaching for his gun. He had convinced himself that someone was coming for him. Someone was watching. Someone was waiting to strike. So when he heard the front door open, his mind didn't register Zyariah. It registered danger. She stepped inside, heels clicking against the marble floor. The house was dark, eerily quiet. Maybe she thought Malachi had already gone to bed. Maybe she exhaled in relief, thinking she had avoided another confrontation. She moved through the hallway toward the bedroom. And then, the first shot rang out. The bullet tore into her shoulder, spinning her around, her purse dropping to the floor. She gasped, pain lancing through her body, and then, Malachi. She screamed his name. But the gun didn't stop. The second shot hit her abdomen. Then another. Her body jerked with every impact, her legs giving out beneath her. She collapsed, clutching her stomach, blood soaking through her dress, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. She wasn't an intruder. She wasn't a threat. She was his Zyariah. The mother of his child. The woman who had known him before the money, before the fame, before the paranoia that was now consuming him whole. But Malachi didn't stop. The bullets kept coming, chest, ribs, side. 11 shots. By the time the final one rang out, Zyariah was sprawled on the cold floor, her blood painting the walls, her body twitching as the last shreds of life clung to her. And that's when Malachi finally saw her. Not as a shadow in the dark. Not as an enemy. But as the woman he had just destroyed. The gun slipped from his hands, clattering onto the tile. His knees buckled. A strangled sob tore from his throat as he scrambled toward her, hands shaking as he pressed against her wounds, as if he could undo what had already been done. "Baby, no, 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 no," his voice broke, cracking under the weight of his own horror. Somewhere in the house, Malachi Jr. was crying. His tiny, innocent voice carried through the mansion, but Zyariah couldn't go to him. She would never go to him again. Malachi fumbled for his phone, fingers slick with blood, pressing 911 with the same hands that had just taken her life. When the dispatcher answered, he was sobbing. I thought she was, oh God, I didn't know." By the time police arrived, the mansion was drenched in silence, except for Malachi's ragged breaths and the faint, muffled cries of his son down the hall. Officers found him kneeling beside Zyariah's lifeless body, his hands coated in red, his eyes empty with the kind of realization that comes too late. "I thought she was an intruder," he whispered. But the gun was still warm in his grip. The bullet still lodged deep in her body. And Zyariah was still dead. The story Malachi told was one of panic, of confusion, of a tragic accident that unfolded in the dead of night. But almost immediately, detectives began picking apart the cracks in his version of events. For starters, there was the security footage. The mansion was lined with high-tech cameras, meant to protect Malachi from the dangers he believed lurked outside. But those same cameras told a truth he hadn't accounted for. At exactly 11:42 p.m., Zyariah pulled into the driveway. She sat in her car for a moment, maybe checking her phone, maybe gathering herself before stepping inside. She wasn't sneaking. She wasn't hesitant. She walked up to the front door like she had 1,000 times before, reached into her purse, and pulled out her key. A key. Not a crowbar. Not a lockpick. Not the tools of an intruder breaking in under the cover of darkness. She unlocked the door, pushed it open, and stepped inside. Detectives replayed the footage over and over again. The timeline didn't lie. Zyariah wasn't creeping into the house. She wasn't stumbling through the shadows. She had entered like she belonged there, because she did. And yet, seconds later, she was dead. There were no signs of forced entry. No shattered glass, no broken locks. Malachi's claims of thinking she was an intruder didn't hold up against the simple fact that she had walked in with her own key. That alone raised suspicions. But there was more. Inside the house, crime scene investigators worked tirelessly, combing through every detail. They noted the placement of the shell casings, the trajectory of the bullets, the absence of any warning shots. If Malachi had truly mistaken Zyariah for a threat, wouldn't there have been hesitation? Wouldn't there have been at least one missed shot, one panicked bullet fired into the wall instead of straight into her body? But no. Every shot hit its mark. The autopsy would confirm what detectives already suspected. Zyariah had been shot at close range. She hadn't been across the room when he fired, she had been mere feet away. He had seen her. He had looked at her. And still, he pulled the trigger. Again. And again. And again. 11 times. Her body bore the brutal evidence. A bullet to the shoulder, another to the abdomen. A devastating shot to the ribs. The path of the bullets told a chilling story. She had turned toward him, had faced him, had screamed his name. And he kept going. The medical examiner noted something else, too. There was no defensive damage to Malachi himself. No bruises, no scratches, no desperate struggle. Zyariah hadn't had a chance to fight back. She hadn't even seen it coming. Then came the toxicology reports. Malachi had claimed he wasn't thinking straight. That he was panicked. But his bloodstream told a different story. Cocaine. Steroids. Alcohol. A dangerous cocktail of substances that explained his paranoia, his spiraling delusions, his inability to tell fantasy from reality. But the drugs didn't pull the trigger. Malachi did. As the evidence mounted, detectives saw the picture more clearly. This wasn't a case of mistaken identity. This wasn't an accident. This was execution. And now, Malachi Dupree, once a golden boy of the sports world, a man with the world at his feet, was looking at a future that no longer included stadiums, roaring crowds, or million-dollar contracts. No. Now, he was looking at a future behind bars. The trial of Malachi Dupree was more than just a courtroom battle, it was a national spectacle. The moment his arrest was announced, the sports world was shaken to its core. This wasn't just some scandalous headline or another athlete caught in a web of controversy. This was murder. A man who had once been the face of Major League Baseball, a role model for young athletes, was now a killer. The media storm was relentless. Every major news network dissected the case, sports analysts debated his downfall, and social media turned into a war zone. Fans were split down the middle. Some saw Malachi as a broken man, trapped in the darkness of fame, consumed by paranoia, a victim of his own success. They pointed to his grueling career, the pressures of being a superstar, and his spiraling mental health as explanations for his actions. But others saw only a monster. A man who had everything and still took the life of the woman who had stood by him since the very beginning. To them, there was no excuse. Zyariah was a victim of domestic violence, a woman who had tried to escape but never got the chance. Her supporters flooded social media with her smiling pictures, her voice recordings, her text messages, anything to remind the world that she wasn't just another forgotten tragedy. As the trial began, the prosecution wasted no time painting a damning picture of Malachi. Witness after witness took the stand, exposing the dark reality behind his carefully curated public persona. Zyariah's friends spoke of the countless times she had tried to leave. The way Malachi manipulated her, controlled her, made her believe she had no way out. Her best friend, voice shaking, recalled their last conversation. "One day, he's going to kill me." Those words, chilling and prophetic, echoed through the courtroom. The prosecution presented text messages, pages of desperate pleas, of Zyariah confiding in friends, of her detailing his violent mood swings and suffocating control. She had feared him. She had known what he was capable of. But the most powerful testimony came from Malachi's own past. Former teammates took the stand, describing a man who was unraveling. His paranoia, his violent outbursts, his erratic behavior behind the scenes. One former teammate revealed that Malachi had once accused him of plotting against him simply because he laughed at a joke Malachi didn't understand. A trainer described the effects of the steroids, how they intensified his rage, how they made his mind unstable. And then there were the guns. The prosecution laid it out plain and simple. Malachi Dupree was obsessed with control, obsessed with power, and when he felt like he was losing it, he snapped. This wasn't a tragic mistake. It was murder. But Malachi's defense team fought back hard. They painted him as a man suffering from years of physical and mental damage. They brought in medical experts to discuss the effects of repeated head trauma from his years in the league, the dangers of long-term steroid use, and how it could lead to violent, impulsive behavior. They pushed the idea that Malachi had acted out of fear, that his paranoia had consumed him to the point where he truly believed he was protecting himself. They played up his charity work, his philanthropic efforts, the scholarships he had funded for underprivileged kids. They showed videos of him signing autographs for young fans, hugging his mother after a big game, playing with his son. They wanted the jury to see a man, not a killer. But the evidence was undeniable. The security footage. The close-range gunshots. The lack of hesitation. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours. When they returned, the courtroom was silent. Malachi sat motionless, hands folded in his lap, staring straight ahead as the verdict was read. Guilty. First-degree murder. A wave of emotion crashed through the room. Zyariah's family sobbed, clutching each other as the weight of justice settled in. Malachi's supporters shook their heads in disbelief, some even cursing at the judge. Then came the sentencing. Life without the possibility of parole. It was over. Malachi Dupree, once a superstar, once a man with the world at his feet, would spend the rest of his days behind bars. No more million-dollar contracts. No more roaring crowds. No more bright lights and stadiums. Just a cold, gray cell and the echoes of the life he had destroyed. Malachi Dupree had it all: fame, fortune, a future that most could only dream of. But none of it could save him from himself. His paranoia, his obsession with control, his unchecked rage, everything that had been simmering beneath the surface for years finally exploded in a single, irreversible act of violence. 11 bullets. 1 life stolen. A son left without a mother. Zyariah Cole was more than just a headline. She was a mother, a daughter, a woman who tried to escape but never got the chance. She saw the warning signs. She felt the danger closing in. But every attempt to break free only tightened Malachi's grip. And in the end, that grip turned deadly. This case is a chilling reminder of how love can twist into something monstrous. How power, fame, and money can shield a person from consequences, until it's too late. Malachi may have been battling his demons, but did that excuse what he did? Was he truly a victim of his own deteriorating mind, or was this a calculated act of control and jealousy? Could Zyariah have escaped if someone had taken the warning signs more seriously? One life ended. Another ruined. A legacy forever stained. If this story shocked you, like this video and subscribe for more cases that expose them.